Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Pints and Quarts, a show brought to you by the Craft Beer Nation. Today is Thursday, March 3rd, 2016, and tonight we don't have a guest, but we're going to try to do our best to talk to you about a very interesting topic, and we're also going to bring you a little bit of news. So, before we get into the show, we're going to play a little bit of theme music, and while that theme music is playing, that's going to be the perfect time for you to go check us out on all of our different social media platforms. We tweet at CBN Community. We're on Facebook at the Craft Beer Nation. We're on Instagram at craftbeer_nation. And of course, you can find us on Google Plus. And you can find our past episodes on our YouTube channel. So just go to YouTube and search for Craft Beer Nation. So pour that beer in a glass and get comfortable, and we'll be right back.
Time now for a look back at the last week in the craft beer industry. Pour a cold one and sit back for an all-new episode of Pints and Quarts, presented by Craft Beer Nation.
All right, ladies and gents, thank you so much for deciding to join us tonight. We have a regular panel here. We have Gil Mello joining us tonight. Gil, how are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing awesome.
I guess Gil is doing just fine. Freddie, how are you doing tonight, sir?
Beer in a glass?
What's going on, fellas? I'm doing good, guys. How's everyone?
I'm doing well. I have no complaints. As you can see, I'm sporting my new hat from Revelry Brewing down in Charleston, South Carolina. I just came back from Brewvival this past weekend, and they should change it to the Liver Olympics because so much goes on right before Brewvival within the whole city of Charleston, Charleston's craft beer scene, should I say, and then everybody's doing bottle shares because people are coming from out of town and people doing bottle shares. And
is that a one-day or
awesome.
2-day event?
It's a one-day festival. The festival itself is one day, but they have events going on like that Friday and that Sunday. So, at different craft beer venues throughout Charleston. So, if you've never been to Brewvival, I'm going to suggest that you check it out next year. It's the last Saturday in February. It's always breweries from different places in the country, but the people that do come, they're pouring a lot of one-offs, a lot of special brews, maybe things that you've never had before. You probably have variants, but this is a new variant that you may have never had before. So it's so much fun. This is my third year going in a row. Gil, you gotta come, man.
It's February, man.
I know it's hard for you.
For me, is like a tough time. I wish was at least maybe a week earlier, or maybe a couple weeks later. But I get jealous every time you go there, and I like South Carolina, so I guess I would like South Carolina and beer together.
Yeah. So Revelry is a brewery out of Charleston. They're brewing some great stuff. We're actually going to have them on the show here shortly, so I'm looking forward to having those guys join us. So, but let's get into the show. We don't have a guest tonight, as I said earlier. So we have two news articles that we want to talk about because we've touched on them before in the past, and then we also want to talk about a topic that we thought was pretty interesting. It's craft beer and entertainment, right? So I'll just leave that there and let you wonder how we're going to approach it or what exactly we're going to talk about. Let your juices flow on your thoughts on craft beer and entertainment.
And the Oscar goes to.
Before we get there, let's go ahead and hit these news articles real quick. One that we wanted to talk about is I don't even remember how long ago this was. I think it was several months ago.
Mm-hmm.
On one of our shows we spoke about the pay to play thing that goes on. Specifically, this case that we spoke about in a prior episode was in Boston, and it was a distributor that was being accused of taking kickbacks and all that stuff to keep paying out kickbacks to keep their taps on at different restaurants and all that stuff. And this particular wholesaler is called Craft Beer Guild LLC, and they're responsible for selling the article came from Brewbound, so let me give credit where credit's due. they sell about 200 different craft brands from around the U.S. and they've agreed to pay more than $2 million, a $2 million fine for violating state laws that prohibit unfair trade practices and illegal activities, which is essentially the whole pay to pay scheme. And in this, well, not this month, but in February, um, it was the end of, well, it's not even the end. February marked 15 months into the investigation that was done by the Massachusetts Alcoholic Beverages Control and Commission, and they handed them the Craft Beer Guild actually got a 90-day suspension, but in lieu of the 90-day suspension, they had an opportunity to pay this fine, and it's for a violation of unfair retail practices that we know as pay to play. So in lieu of the suspension, the fine is equal to 50% of their gross daily profit multiplied by the number of days its license was scheduled to be suspended. So 50% of their daily profit times 90 days
90 days.
is how they got to the $2 million. Well, it's actually about 2.6 million. So
2.6 million, yeah.
it's closer to $3 million. And I mean, if these cats can just come out of pocket and pay a $3 million fine to keep the party going, that goes to show that they're probably doing pretty well. They ain't hurting that much. So
yeah, it's just it's crazy. You can see that there's more to this than just pay to play. I think the problem with this is the unfairness, but also I think I remember the time when we talked about there were situations where they were like telling bars what not to sell as well, and I think that was a big deal.
Took it too far is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, they took way too far. And trying to remember the name of the brewery that tweeted about it and became a big thing at the time.
Pretty Things, wasn't it?
Pretty Things, that's it.
Yep.
Pretty Things. It was in October 2014 that he did that. Yeah, October.
And now they close the doors.
Pretty Things, yeah.
Yeah, so 2014. So that's a long time to come to a resolution. Yeah, I think he did like a tweet about it, and then afterwards start talking about it. It was yeah, it wasn't pretty at the time, and I think everybody knew, but nobody was verbal about.
Yes, that's the thing, Gil. I don't think that they're being so much penalized for pay to play, because I think that's actually more common than we realize. But they took it too far.
Mm-hmm.
Once you start, telling people to not put this particular tap on and stuff like that, I mean, you're asking for it, right? I mean,
Yep, absolutely.
Well, yeah, it's exactly what I say. It's like, there's one thing about you nudge it here, nudge it there, and you're using the market, but when you start interrupt other people's business in an unfair way, like, okay, you can't sell this, or I'm not gonna sell this, and many times leaving things sitting, without distributing because they are paying to play, but they're getting money from a different layer as well. I think that's the other big problem you have with that kind of thing.
I thought it was interesting in the article too is how they mentioned, aside from the negative points too, but how some of the suppliers to the distributors now may have a chance to slip in and say, break these really strict clauses and contracts that they can't leave.
Some of the breweries.
Yeah, the suppliers of this. Yeah. To the distributors. May have a chance now to kind of go to court and say, they were unhappy already. Now they have even more of a reason to say, we want to break from this completely because X, Y, Z.
Yeah, but so it also made the distinction, Freddie. I think specifically people who don't have like a written agreement in place, it's super easy for them to ride out, right?
Yep.
But people who have an actual agreement with them, they can petition to get out, right? But it's a process, and it still might take 6 months.
Yeah. Yep.
But there are states you can't. There's states you can't at all. I mean, you once you.
But in this case, Gil, because because Craft Beer Guild was found guilty of doing this. Normally they wouldn't be allowed to get out, but now they have the option to do so. But it's a 6-month process, and in the meantime, that brewery still has to continue providing beer to the Craft Brew Guild for them to distribute.
Yeah.
So
What's the Dempa Cat? Isn't that the guy, the pretty things?
Mhm.
I think it's Dan Paquette or Dan Piquet, something like, I never can get his name right. That started this whole revolution and to start a conversation, start ranting about it, because he thought he got screwed in the whole deal.
he probably
And,
did.
yeah.
So Craft Brew Guild had 7 days to pay this fine. They're not going to appeal or they're not going to fight or anything. They're going to pay it because if they were to shut down for 7 days, imagine if it was a 7-day period when like Bourbon County Stout was going to be released, or if it was a 7-day period, you know what I'm saying, where it was like a KBS release and they shut down. Man, Freddie would be livid because he couldn't get any of those beers up in Boston, right?
Well, there's also the harm that would give to his
Oh,
customers.
I'm gonna get it.
Can you imagine not distributing your customers' stuff for 7 days?
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Bottle shop, mom and pop owners, smaller community. It's gonna be tough.
Yeah, it hurts us as the buyer of the craft beer. It hurts the retailer, and it also hurts the brewery. So they chose to pay the fine, which I think is considering they got caught doing wrong, going ahead and taking that hit and paying the fine was the noble thing to do.
As well as, like you said, as well as the partakers, the bars or whoever were.
Yeah.
Again, either noble or the 7 days grace, 7 days closed period there would be more expensive to them.
Yeah.
Contract wise.
So here's the thing, though. The interesting thing is, it's not like this is the end of the investigation. The investigation is still open, and there could be additional charges brought against retailers, against producers, and against other wholesalers who may be all participating in this scheme. And five Boston bars have already been charged with violating the state regulations. And Freddie, let us know if you've heard of anything, but Poe's Pub, Rebel Restaurants, aka doing business as Remy's Sports Bar and Grill.
Yeah, Remy's is one of their bars. It's right near my job.
Okay, Poe's Pub does business as Estelle's. There's Northern Avenue Hospitality doing business as Gather. There's Game on Fenway, and there's Coogan's. They could all face fines, suspensions, or even worse. This would be the killer, having their license revoked. That would be a complete game changer for either of those places named if they're an establishment that serves alcohol. So
because there's other side to this whole play to pay, and there's also the side where the distribution will send their stuff to establishment that will. You just mentioned Bourbon County, right? Everybody wants to have Bourbon County. How many establishments do you think are bottle shops, or I don't know how the situation in Boston, put that extra money so they can get more of the stuff, and maybe somebody who doesn't have that buying power just get nothing, How much of that decision is all financial based?
We gotta. It's not. Craft beer faces enough hurdles as it is right now, so we gotta try to do everything that we can do to ensure that the playing field is level, right? The last thing we need is cannibalism and us taking ourselves out, right? That's all. I'm glad they came down with this ruling, man. It's the right thing to do.
Now, I have no problem with a reward system where, you distribute your product and then you have a place that moves your product a lot.
So you give them your limited release.
Right. I think that's correct to be done. You reward them because that's the people who are selling your stuff, keeping you in business. It's different than selling.
It's absolutely different.
Your release, yeah.
But that's something totally different than paying somebody money or telling them not to put this beer on tap or stuff like that. So Yeah, I'm glad it was done. I ain't salty at all about it.
Yeah, and we talk
So
about it right off when the tweeter came. We all, I think we all had a tweeter that day, and it
mhm.
was
Yeah.
everywhere. So
So there's more to come on this, considering the investigation is still ongoing. So we'll try to stay on top of this one and bring you guys any updates that we come across, particularly if any of the breweries, popular breweries in the Boston area, are impacted as a result of this. So stay
Absolutely.
tuned as far as that goes. And moving on, we a couple of weeks ago, a few weeks ago actually, I think you guys saw the show. Or at least I hope you saw the show. If you haven't seen it, go back on YouTube and watch it. We had Mike Hawker on from Due South Brewing. He's the owner of Due South. And Gil found some information regarding Due South just today. Gil, you want to go ahead and share that?
yeah, actually, he was very active on Facebook today. I was in a chat here. They put a post about the expansion, and Mike itself came in and say, "Hey, this is Mike," and he thanks everybody for supporting them, and they should because Due South is getting another 27,000 square feet of warehouse, or they call bay in the area there, another.
Wait,
Um,
wait, 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 wait. And another 27,000, or is it going to be
no,
total
it's
of
gonna
27?
a total. Sorry, another 12,000 for a total of 27. Oh, 12,000 square foot for a total of 27,000 square foot. So 12,000 square foot is quite a good size. And I remember when he was on the show, he told us about that expansion that they were looking in. They were trying to get some areas, and he didn't say much, but I remember he was talking about their tap room. They need more space, and one of the jokes was like, "Oh, we need more bathrooms," for our customers, and so I think it's great for them because they're going to be able to not increase the size of the brewery, the tap room, but they're going to kind of have more space because they want to enlarge their barrel aging system and their sour. They want to have an area for sour beers, and that's no easy thing to do. Having sour in your brewery is kind of a scary thing, but I don't know how the layout is. I know they want to have everything ready by the fall, the whole project done, and I'm sure they're gonna be posting layouts and pictures and stuff from the expansion, and it's great. I mean, we talked to Mike just 2 weeks ago. Really nice person, really grounded. It was great to see somebody like him running a place like Due South. Um,
Yeah,
Mhm.
he seems like a lot of fun. He's like, I would love to work for that guy, man. You know what I mean?
yeah.
He's like somebody I would love to work for, especially in the brewing profession. But I think the interesting thing we were speaking before we came on air is that one of the things that they were going to do to the space is not necessarily increase their they're not going to install a new system and get a new mash tun and all that stuff or a
Mhm.
new kettle. They're essentially going to add fermenters, right?
Mhm. Yeah, that's why he
Amongst
told us.
other things.
Yeah, that's why he told us during the interview. It was they want to increase their capacity, having more fermenters in there. As I said before, they want to have more barrels. They want to have a location so they can produce more barrel aged stuff. But what I'm excited to see some sours coming from them.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, uh, I think they have the best creamy ale on the market, bar none.
Without
You know,
question.
and their IPAs are really solid, really flavorful. I think they're doing the right thing, and he seems to be the guy who enjoys to come to work every day,
Yeah.
boots on the ground, and he's not sitting in the office or things like that. Really happy for them. I'm excited now. I want to go to
Mhm.
Florida and visit them. And he promised me a Nutella stout,
Yeah.
and I have a bet he will brew a Nutella stout. I'll
Hey,
fly
hey,
him
hey,
just
hey,
for that review.
chocolate and hazelnut,
Sorry,
Gil.
let me fix that. A chocolate hazelnut stout.
Yeah.
So look, and that's an interesting thing. And the reason why I brought that up was that I wanted to point out that a lot of these breweries, their output isn't necessarily determined by the capacity of their mass ton or the capacity of their kettle. It's about the amount of fermenters that they have. I mean, they can brew round the clock on whatever system, but if you don't have fermentation capacity, that's gonna limit your output. And so the fact that these guys are going to be putting in new fermenters now and means that they can put out more beer, which means that they can better serve their home state, and now they can look into, going into additional states. They're in Florida and they're in the Philly area, I believe. But now, who knows? I mean, if a brewery like the brewery is doing like 10,000 barrels a year, and they're as popular as they are, if Due South is putting out 10,000 barrels a year, I mean, they should be able to hit a few more states on the East Coast and widen their footprint and make that cream ale that much more sought after. Yes, folks, they sought out cream ale. It's a thing. It's amazing. So
they made a thing, yeah. And I think that the sweet spot, you have to go that 15 barrel up. Once you hit that 15 barrel is when you can rely more on your capacity and then get you become a more competitive, because I think that's about what the brewery has.
Yeah, I think
they're
so.
everywhere. Now the brewery has a trick, like they do big bottles, so you can get a lot of more beers out on the market. It's much tougher when you're doing 6-packs or you're canning. It doesn't seem like, but bombers actually are pretty good for the breweries. You can sell single bottles, you can have a large distribution. Once you do a 6-pack, that gets much harder. You pack more beer on that 6-pack, and distribution get a little tight. So
yeah, they make more money off of bombers and 750s than they do off of 6-pack. So
definitely.
The 6-pack is always your better bet, but I don't always want to make a 6-pack commitment.
But I'm happy about the bombers, because then I can get beers that normally I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Have larger distribution.
Mm-hmm.
So nonetheless, cheers to those guys over at Due South. Mike, I know you watching, so so I know you're one of the viewers right now. I know you watching, Mike. Cheers to you. I wish you guys nothing but the best, and hopefully next time I'm in South Florida visiting my broski woski, I can come by and visit you guys. So, that said, let's go ahead and shift gears a little bit and talk about the actual topic for the night, which is beer and entertainment. I don't know, where do we go? I mean, there's a lot of beer out right now that's inspired by music, and particularly Dogfish Head. They have a bunch of Sam Calagione is a huge music fan, and not just like a music fan, but he's like an old music fan, right?
He has a band. They have a band and stuff. So
yeah, so
music oriented.
They have a few beers that have musical undertones or musical elements to it. Not the first one, but the most recent one is it's called a what's it called, a beer to drink music to, something weird like that. It's called a beer to drink music to, right? I'm not sure exactly what the connection is to that one, but nonetheless, that's a music inspired beer. And we have this document. They have a Faithful Ale, which is inspired by Pearl Jam. They have Miles Davis's Bitches Brew, which was a collaboration they did. They actually did that collaboration with Sony, to brew a beer to commemorate like one of the I think it was like a remake or a remaster of one of Miles Davis's Bitches Brew album. They have that American Beauty, which is they call it an Imperial Pale Ale. Don't ask me the difference between an India Pale Ale and an Imperial Pale Ale, but
well, it's just that they dropped here in the West. They start dropping the name India Pale Ale to Imperial. It's a synonyms, two different names for the same thing.
Okay, and so that American Beauty beer was inspired by Grateful Dead. The whole granola, because the beer has granola in it.
Yeah. They did probably about a dozen beers or more related, because they have a music series, plus the one-offs that they did too.
And the other popular one was called a Hellhound, or Robert, and that was inspired by Robert Johnson. Hellhound on My Ale. That was actually a really good beer. I think it was an IPA with actual like lemon pulp in it. and I don't see that one too much anymore. Maybe it was a limited release or whatever, but that was actually, I think it's a little underrated beer, man. That was a
Yeah.
good beer.
Trying to remember when that came out the first time, but it's been several years ago. I'm not
I want to
sure
say
if that.
about 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, that's true because that came in a champagne bottle.
Mm-hmm.
The label actually is a dark label. Sometimes when I look at the shelf, I almost the Faithful Ale and the Hell Around kind of look similar to me. If I just glance around, kind of that same thing. Yeah, and I think that is a. I think I'm trying to remember. I think that was like a every other year because they're doing some of their beers. They do year, every other years. They rotate between different beers. And they're not alone in this. I mean, I guess they're more prominent because Sam is such a high contrast figure on the beer world, and very. We know about him a lot, but Stone is another big. Greg is big into music, and he's done maybe not music, but I know they do a lot of collabs with people in the music industry. I know they did one with the guitar player from Alice Cooper.
Uh, um, oh crap. Well, Collective
Collective.
Distortion.
Yeah, that's it.
That was the one that had it had some kind of berries in it, like elder. No, not elder. That wasn't elderberries, but like dang it, it had berries in it that provided like a nice little uh, uh, fruity tart background to that beer. That was actually a really good beer. Now that I remember it, but I'm a Stone fanboy, so
Yeah.
take that
I
how you
think
take it.
the problem with Stones that they make so many beers and then they're not always are good. But if you that their portfolio is pretty high. I mean, I would say most their stuff is pretty good.
Hmm.
Um, no coconut on their beers though. But other than that,
And then there's also the Robeson Brewing. I don't know how these guys haven't gotten a lawsuit yet.
no, because the Iron Maid participate on the making of the brew. The
Oh,
beer.
okay.
Yeah, they
Okay.
got they were trying to remember. Two of the guys from Iron Maiden were part of creating the beer. They're big beer dudes, and so yeah,
And the beer was called the Trooper, right?
because that's one of their most known single and album. And they have the whole the holding the flag, the kind of the dead
It's
guy coming
pretty
out.
available a lot of places too.
It
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
And
Yeah,
then, so just to run. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, I think that's there's I think it's brewed there. I think there's some European distribution that brings them over.
So just to run down some of the ones that we have on the list that Gil put together. Heavy Seas Smoke on the Water Porter.
Yeah.
Stillwater out of Baltimore. They're kind of a gypsy brewer, but they had three music beers that had one called Mono Stereo, which was Mono, which was a Pilsner, Stereo, which is an IPA, and then Surround, which was an Imperial Smoked Stout.
And
North,
that's the three first. They're gonna do a whole series on it. So those are the three
Sounds.
first beer they came out.
so also North Coast and Brother Thelonious, obviously brewed in conjunction or in connection with Thelonious Monk. That's actually quite the underrated beer.
Yeah, it's one of my. I have it here on my shelf because I always have that.
I think it's a Belgian
I think
Abbey Ale, right?
yeah, Abbey, and part of the procedure goes to Thelonious Monk Institute of
Okay.
Jazz. Yeah, help people to learn music and stuff like this. So
It's like a
uh,
big 9% Abbey Ale too. It's a
yeah,
big
it's
Abbey
it's
Ale.
awesome. It comes in big bottles and small bottle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have the little ones because the big ones I have a hard time on my own, but it's excellent.
And,
That's as you said, that's an underrated beer.
and if you don't like Thelonious Monk, then you need to get a life. Um, Cambridge Brewing, Sergeant Pepper. Um, I personally was never a Beatles fan, so Gil and Freddie made me hip before we came on the air. So I was like, I don't know who the hell Sergeant Pepper
Man,
is.
what kind of cave were you hitting it?
Hey, I was never into the Beatles, man. I mean, come on, I ain't seen Star Wars, so it's okay for me to. It should be expected for me to
Yeah,
not listen to.
it was Sergeant Pepper and the Lonely Hearts Club Band. That was the yeah. I
So
mean, they
here,
were
so
all dressed up. I mean, how can you not know that, man?
listen. So here's the thing. It's not that I haven't heard of the Beatles. You definitely gotta be living under a rock to have not heard of the Beatles. I just wasn't an active Beatles fan. So
Well, 1978. That's when the album came out, so we were all little puppies then.
yeah, and not my first genre of choice. So, so moving on, we got Cambridge. Well, we just said that Surly. They have one called Doomtree, which is apparently from a hip hop collective that I have never heard of.
That's big.
Um,
I think they're getting big in Michigan. Yeah, Michigan is being a big. It's transformed itself both in the beer, not Michigan, Minnesota, beer and music kind of state. It's pretty great.
yeah. Well, Eminem's reps Detroit, so the whole 8 Mile. Shout out Marshall Mathers.
Mhm.
Uh, Abita, Purple Haze, Jimi Hendrix, of course, classic.
The worst dressed
Um,
musician in the world.
this is one that I had no idea. Anchor has one called Brotherhood's Theme, which was in collaboration with Chris Brotherhood from the Black Crows. Shout out to Gil for getting that, because clearly, if I ain't listening to the Beatles, I sure ain't listening to the Black Crows. Um, Elysian, we're not gonna talk about them because they're not craft anymore.
No, but what I thought was funny about Elysian that they had this. Remember they had this label based on the Nirvana album, and it's the beer called the Big Sucks, and was a loser, loser, and the top used to say corporate
Oh,
beer still.
corporate beer sucks. Yeah,
And what happened to that? You know,
Whoops.
they sold out. They went corporate.
yeah.
Corporate money
Sucks,
don't
but
suck.
yeah, they should put a new label like beer, corporate beer still sucks, but not their money.
Corporate beer sucks, but we'll take that bread.
Not the check.
And then Freddie added this one, Laughing Dog. They're out of California, right?
That's a good question.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and say I think they're out of California. They have one called The Dog Father, which is obviously it's D-O-double-G. It's after a Snoop Dogg album, right? And Boulder Beer out of Colorado. They have Haze and Confused, which, well, that should probably go under our TV and movies category from Days and Confused movies. So that's going to be our segue into the next category, which is TVs and movies. And the first one,
Laughing Dog is Idaho.
oh, okay, well, they got Cali roots because they getting there with Snoop, nonetheless.
They make a Newbies, which is
Yeah.
Dogfather play on the movie. Obviously, Godfather as well.
right. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, and that's not a bad beer. It's
They're a little, they're as a brewery, at least on the East Coast. I think they're a little underrated.
They are, and I find a lot of their labels a little silly, but the beers I think are pretty decent. Yeah.
Yeah. So beer and TVs and movies. The first one that stands out this is obviously the first one that jumped out in Gil's head was Gang, because all of us here are Game of Thrones fans, and they started, I think it was with season 4 maybe. They started doing a beer for season 3 because season 3 because they came out with the blonde ale, then they came out with the black saison, and then they did another one, a Raven something.
Three-eyed
Did they do the dragon? Was a dragon one or something?
This was the last one. That's the red ale. The three-eyed Raven. Raven was not the last. It was the last one. Yeah.
So I gotta tell you, I think it was kind of brilliant on the behalf of Gang, because Game of Thrones has got to be one of the more. I mean, Game of Thrones has exceeded the popularity of, say, The Sopranos and maybe even The Wire.
Oh yeah, well, I don't know about The Wire for the time, but probably you may be right. But The Wire, I think, as popular as this TV show, but The Wire has social influence as well that I don't think
No,
Logan.
so I think there's more of a connection with The Wire because we knew that The Wire was real life. So
Mhm.
when I talk about The Wire, I'm like, yo, that's one of the best because I know a Baltimore cop and he was like the way it went down in The Wire is really how it goes down in Baltimore, right? So that made The Wire real. It made it almost tangible to me.
Are
Whereas
you
Game of
saying
Thrones
you
is
don't
like,
believe in dragons?
No, who doesn't believe in dragon? So yeah, so the, the Game of Thrones was the Iron Throne, the Black Take the Black Stout, Fire and Blood, Valar Morghulis, and then the Three-Eyed
Yeah,
Raven.
Raven.
oh, so it's
And
been four of them.
well, there's the fifth one just coming out right now. Trying too hard to remember the name. I saw it today actually. A post for the release for the new beer because it was it was four on the first contract, and then they did five so far. There's five beer, and the sixth one I think is coming out.
Because they had one that dropped when the series wasn't even playing.
Yeah.
I want to say, whatever.
Well, they try to release them every time the show is about to come out. So
No, but they didn't. So season 6 is about to come out, right? So 4 beers have been out. That means that they would have had to have started putting them out in season 1,
right.
season 2.
So they're gonna have 25 cases of the new beer. It's called the Seven Kingdom. It's a hoppy wheat ale, and that's the one that's
Okay.
coming out. And it's the first one coming in a different bottle. Instead of it coming in the bomber, it's gonna come in a champagne bottle.
Nice. Okay, I might be able to get behind that one.
Shout out to our brother Charles Dunkley, who's Oma Gang fan, who seems to always get the Game of Thrones as soon as they release.
My
Yeah.
man goes hard with Oma Gang.
He's like
Um,
he's the
Ambassador.
he's the Randa's Stone version of him gang.
Yep.
so there's also and this I'm gonna say all this wrong because I do not watch Lord of the Rings, but Fish Brewing with the Gollum pills, the
Well, yeah, it's the Hobbit series they did.
yeah,
I actually have this a small stout right here. Whoever's listened to the podcast won't see, but if you're watching on YouTube, so the smog stout, and I had the Gollum, and I have the Tripel, which is the port,
the Bolog, or
the
I don't
blog. Yeah, I have it. I can get it. None of them are really good.
Edit.
The bog. No, I mean they're not bad beer. Let me say it correct.
no, Fish Brewing is whack, man. Let's
Yeah.
just be honest.
No, I'm gonna ask you that. Does anybody ever heard about fish brewing before this? Have you ever heard about any
I,
other
I
beer they
had
make?
I had one from them before, and it was not memorable.
I thought they were just a contract brewing. They used to beer for other people, and they decide to do something there. I don't know. I have never
MEA.
heard about them before this.
So,
And
Gil, do you have plans to drink that beer, or are you just collecting them as a Lord of the Rings fan?
well, not anymore because I opened the smelt now. But they are all sitting on the shelves around here. I
Wait, is
couldn't
that
walk
what you're
somewhere,
drinking
but
right now?
I mean, yeah, I'm drinking the
Small,
so not,
small.
Is
I
it
mean,
terrible?
no, it's not terrible. As I said, it's a good beer. It's just it's okay, I should say. The stout is not as bad. I think it's warm. I think actually would be nice to rest a little longer. But the Gollum wasn't that all that great. No.
Gil's like this one would be great if you could get it right at about 33 degrees.
Yeah.
It would
Right.
taste delicious.
On if I can put it in the bottom of my drink.
There's a reason why he's sitting on the shelf. Let's just say
Uh,
that.
Dogfish Head has Wrath of Pecan, which Wrath of Pecan. Who am I?
Rest
Are I not from
You're
South?
me.
Wrath of Pecan, which is from the Wrath of Khan from Star Trek. Terrapin has a Walking Dead Blood Orange IPA. I could have sworn that Flying Dog had, well, they do have a Blood Orange IPA, but it's not called Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Sniff.
I could not get my hands on that terrapin. I would love to try that because I love Blood Orange, and that sounds. Although it's a Walking Dead, the beer itself sounds great.
I'll see if I can find it for you, man.
Okay.
And Walking Dead, one of my favorite shows, man. Whew, love that show.
I'm
Snake
giving it
River.
a rest. They dragged a little.
Oh, I
too
just
much.
found. So there's a. It's called Dog Street Brewing Company in Philadelphia. They have Oh, what the heck? This is a new one for us. An American Pale Stout.
What?
It's called Walker, and it has like a zombie on the. You know they call the Walkers. Well,
Hmm.
they're
Wait,
Walkers.
so is this their take on Stone's Master of Disguise, where it was like a golden stout?
I don't know. I just literally saw it, and I'm like, oh, let me click on it.
Okay.
Yeah, because a walker is it's a loose term for zombie.
Yeah, the zombie.
So Snake River has Obi-Wan. Obviously that's a
I mean, nicely done, so they could not get lawsuit or anything.
right. So that's their little tip of the cap to
Yeah.
Star Wars. Westbrook has a Dark Helmet, another Star Wars tip, and I think Dark Helmet is actually a
Westbrook.
yeah, Dark Helmet is it a like a Schwartz beer
Yeah,
or something like
Schwartz
that?
beer. Yeah.
Clown Shoes, they have several pop culture inspired beers from the spaghetti western to what does that say?
Ninja movies.
Oh, ninja movies. The Good, the Bad,
I
and the
spelled correctly.
Unidragon. The Good, the Bad, and the Unidragon. So that's the thing. Clown shoes for some gypsy brewers. They make some really good beers, man. They do a fantastic job, and they're
Crazy labels, crazy names.
But
They
just
try everything.
tonight we mentioned like two or three like Evil Twin. I mean, there's something to say about gypsy brewing. I mean, well, first you need to love to do what you're doing, right? And not to sell out your name, but
Here's the thing, Gil. If I were a gypsy brewer, I mean, and obviously I'm saying this not knowing what their time constraints look like, but if I were a gypsy brewer, I'd have me like a 10-gallon Blickman setup at home, or SS setup at home, constantly brewing these test batches, and when I find one that works, you just scale it up, take it to one of your buddies, and have them brew it, right? So, but I know they don't have time for that. I mean,
no.
consider Yeppy. He's brewing in Westbrook down in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, and Charleston, and he's also brewing up in isn't he brewing up in Boston or in somewhere in New York or something like that?
Yeah, he was. They had a place in New York. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So-
I think I would like to have maybe a base with a pilot system a little
Yeah,
bigger.
definitely New York.
Your
I know
five,
they have things in
because
there.
go from a home group like 15-gallon to a big. It's hard to scale.
I mean, but math. I mean, they got programs that'll scale it up for you essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, even
It's not an
Beersmith
easy
will
task,
scale it
though.
up for you probably.
It's not an easy task though. I think that's what a lot of. I think a bigger pilot system. I think you're more consistent to get bigger. I think it's hard to go from 10, 15-gallon to production. It's a lot of work.
So Clown Shoes, man, we need to do a Clown Shoes show on Friday night, man.
That'd be sweet. Yeah,
we
that's
need to add
be
them on.
available
We
too.
do, and they increase their. I didn't see them often here. All of a sudden, they are everywhere in the shelves here. I was in Maryland. I want to say Maryland the other day, and I saw their stuff there too. So somehow it's working for them.
Yep.
So also we got J.W. Lee out of UK. They have a beer called Moonraker. It's just from a 007 movie.
Probably the worst
and-
007 movie ever made.
But J.W. Lee supposedly makes a freaking world-class English barley wine, and that's probably English barley wine is probably my favorite style of beer. And I need, if anybody watching this or anybody who's gonna watch this in the future, if you have
You
access
know about.
to a J.W. Lee barley wine, if you're looking at this video on YouTube in 2017 or 2022 or 2038, comment and be like, Randy, what's your address? I can send you a J.W. Lee barley wine, and I'll be like, what? You're so kind.
I would say anytime somebody tries a barley wine that is freaking awesome, let us know.
Yeah, for me specifically, if it's an English barley wine.
Yeah, and I was about to say that, Jay, you know, a brewery in UK, if you don't know your barley wine, you probably wouldn't be around very long, right? Or you
Right,
would
right.
become a
Yeah.
corporated beer. Yeah.
And then there's New England. They had a Imperial Stout Trooper. They had to stop making.
Didn't we
No,
talk about?
correction,
Yeah.
correction. They still make it.
Yeah, because we talked about them 2 shows ago, and I
So
thought,
what happened was they got in trouble because, as you can see here, the label, it was a stormtrooper mask. So they obviously got hit up for that. So what they did is, instead of changing the name and going through all that stuff because of the stormtrooper mask, they put the Groucho Marx glasses. So they got the fluffy eyebrows and sunglasses and the mustache over
On the
the
storm.
trooper mask.
so the problem was the image, not the name.
Exactly.
I mean,
Yep.
at this point, the beer is so well known
Yep.
that it could put Bozo the Clown on that can.
And I think there's funny, man, and I mean they also had an issue with the Gandhi bot.
Yeah, they changed the G-Bot.
Yeah, so
I had
they
that
changed
last
it,
night.
and
That's a good beer.
they changed the label too. Was they actually showed his whole full body before? Now it just shows like the robotic arm, like driving through a bunch of mess garbage. But yeah, I mean that beer, the Imperial Stout Trooper, is an awesome beer. They make a barrel aged version of that too, which is ridiculous. I mean that's
another beer I have
But
never found,
it's
and I
funny,
want one
man.
just for collection purpose.
It's funny how they they said, you know what, you want to screw with us, we're gonna screw with you, and they just they put the mask on it, like here you go, it's disguised. I mean that's hilarious.
That's hilarious to me, man. I can't even begin to tell you. He put the glasses, the eyebrows, and the mustache on.
That's the kind of thing that makes for a good story, you know?
Yeah. Also though, it's like you never notice who I am now, type of
Right.
thing.
That's like Bobby Valentine. Remember he used to be the manager for the Mets, and he got kicked out of the game, and he came back out with the Groucho Marx joint on.
Yeah.
All right, so there's also Black Sheep that make Holy Grail Ale. That's allude to Monty Python.
I think that came out a few years back on their anniversary. I don't know if they're still making them, but
I've never even heard of them.
Yeah, I've seen the can a couple of times, and I didn't pick it up because it was, at the time I thought it was silly, and I regret so much right now.
Yeah. And then there's also Great Lakes. They has the Nosferatu.
Yeah.
I think that's like an Imperial Red Ale.
Yep.
And Nosferatu is a
So
Romanian.
good.
Yeah, I think it's a Romanian word for vampire. Big movie from black and white movies. Creepy dude with the big ears and terribly made, but cool movie.
And then there's also Raucous.
Oh, don't get me started on that brewery.
Optimus Prime. I think I've had that beer before.
Yeah, it's
the best thing this brewery has is the name.
the label of the thing.
And then there's one of my so I'm gonna go ahead and say this. My number one all-time brewery in their short existence is Trillium. And obviously Stone is in my top 3, but Trillium's number 1, and then 2 and 3 alternate between Stone and Firestone Walker. And Firestone Walker, obviously, they make Wookiee Jack.
How can you pick, like, in this day and age, how can you pick a favorite brewery? I couldn't pick a favorite brewery to save my life, man.
I could easily. If I were on my way to a deserted island and I was gonna be there for the rest of my life and I'm not gonna see anybody, I want Galaxy Dry Hopped Fort Point, and I want Archaic.
But I'll tell you what.
Maybe Vicinity.
I hadn't had Treehouse until recently. Man, I was surprised. What a brewery! Yeah,
excellent.
And then I have an hour, a little over an hour for me to start Hands, and then never gave much. And then the other day I finally went to the local bottle shop. Had a bunch of their beers on tap. On tap. Sorry, on their beer. They didn't have cans there because I think they only sell cans out of the brewery. Man, I put on my calendar the day that I'm driving down to Tired Hands.
Yeah, they started pumping out some
I
nice.
had 4 beers. All of them were, 4+ if I would score them. I mean,
I
really,
haven't
really good.
I haven't
Trillion
had
kind of good.
I haven't had tired hands or treehouse. So one of
I
these
mean,
days somebody will hook me up with some treehouse. I know it's out of their way, but one of these days somebody will hook me up with some treehouse.
and that's what I'm saying.
Hold on. And one of these days somebody will hook me up with some tired hands, but I don't know who.
I wish I had nice
In a
rivalry
month for
hat.
now.
That'd be nice.
A month for now. But I will tell you what. For me to pick a favorite brewery, I would have to say a specific style. What's your favorite brewery for
Yeah.
dark body, strong beers or IPAs?
Even that's
You
hard.
know,
Man. Damn.
because I would say, oh, Thrill is my favorite beer until I get a freaking awesome stout, and I think,
Yep.
Trinidad Stout is pretty awesome, but not my favorite.
Yep.
Their IPAs is amazing, but their stout are fairly good. So it's I don't know. It's very very hard. It's a good problem to have right now, I would say.
Man, look. We are witnessing. We are living at probably. We haven't even reached the craft beer crescendo yet, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. No way.
We're
No
still
way.
on the uptip. We're still on the upslope. So, man, we are living in a good time for craft beer. I feel like I can say that unequivocally.
And a
So
good country to have craft beer. 'Cause,
yeah,
I'm not reading for this country, but I have to say that's another thing that makes this country great. I mean, no limit for creativity when it comes. So much influence that South Americans beers that are always German influenced now are getting influenced by North America, and Europeans are getting influenced by North American beers.
yeah.
So
I mean, look, it says something that Greg is opening a stone in Germany. Okay,
right,
that's
and you have Ballast Point, you have Brooklyn, you have all those beers exported to Europe right now and selling really well.
yep. Um, so now let's move on to craft beer and TV because I've seen some craft beer appearances. I know Gil saw one recently. He was watching Grimm.
Yeah, I'm a
Yeah.
big fan of Graham.
And Freddie just got a taste of fresh squeeze, I think, recently, and we saw Deschutes fresh. Gil saw Deschutes fresh squeeze in Grimm.
I annoyed the heck out of my wife that day. We were watching like, and I DVR everything I watch, right? And Grimm is one of my favorite shows, and I'm watching, and she's like not very big, she's not big into Monster and things, but she loves me, so she would watch with me. And all of a sudden I go, "Where's the remote? Where's the remote?" So I freeze and go back, and then go run getting my phone to take a picture. My wife looked at me and said, "After this, I'm going to bed."
And then New Belgium Fat Tire also made an appearance in Breaking Bad. I'm surprised they didn't show any Santa Fe beer
Santa Fe, yeah.
in Breaking
Absolutely.
Bad. Or maybe they didn't. We just didn't catch it.
Yeah, there's I only collect a few that I've seen and that I remember. I bet there's much more than that. I mean, I Big Bang Theory. I probably saw 3 or 4 different ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Founders Breakfast Stout has made an appearance in Franklin and Bash.
Yeah, the
Um,
Bash walks in like holding the. I remember that scene very clear.
Dogfish Head has been on Top Chef. Um, Ballast Point Sculpin has been on, like Gil just said, Big Bang Theory as well as Top Chef. I remember specifically seeing Stone's IPA on Weeds. The show, I think Weeds came was on HBO maybe. It was about this
Yeah,
lady.
it's actually a fairly good show.
It was an
Hilarious.
awesome show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a hilarious show. But it was in Weeds, it was in Chopped, and it was on Cabin Fever. And then Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, geez, it's been on Big Bang Theory. It's been on 40-Year-Old Virgin. It's been on How I Met Your Mother. It's been in my refrigerator. It's been in your refrigerator. It's been everywhere. So
Actually, since you're a big fan of Stone, Greg actually was on Chop. He was one of the judges on Chop, and one of the, I don't know if you ever watched Chopped, but it's this Food Network TV show where they get 3 or 4 chefs and they have open a basket and there's like foie gras or whatever. They have like a duck or rabbit, and then they have like Crispies or granola and like the weird Wheeze cheese, and they have to cook those things together. And one of the challenge was cooking with beer, and it was Stone beers, and Greg was one of the on a judge. So
Gil would have been right at home on that show, on that episode of Chop.
I don't know if you guys remember. I guess it's more movie related though. Do you remember the pic I sent you guys? It was a while back of Charlize Theron, and she was walking the street and like.
Oh yeah.
A case
of
a case 60 IPA. A case. She's carrying it down the street.
You're like, I got a whole new level of respect for Charlize Theron.
I love you.
Yeah, and not only that. I mean, there's few beer shows from the bar restoration to brew dogs, and it's being out there, and I think that's good for craft beer. Being sponsoring sport teams and other things we didn't put in here because it's not part of. But I would think sports nowadays it's almost as entertainment as anything else.
Well, if you watch the Kansas City Royals play, you can't help but to see that huge Boulevard sign in the outfield.
Yep. Yeah. And another amazing brewery and that doing great. Yeah.
Upland Brewing's Dragonfly IPA has been on Parks and Recreation, and last but not least, me being Randy Gardner, sometimes I assume the personality of Randy Watson. Our friends over at, well, I'm not going to turn my computer, but Foothills, they have a beer, you may have heard of it, it's called something like Sexual Chocolate. And that's straight up reference to Coming to America.
Yeah. Big reference that. I don't know how I missed that. Yeah, that's true.
That was Randy Watson's band, because he believed the children of the future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Nonetheless.
And the beer is pretty awesome. I mean, isn't that great when something that you like it's paired to something else that you like? And just,
no doubt about it. Great movie.
Full circle.
Great movie, great beer. Beer references the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, what do? You gotta run with that.
Well, we have Foothills on our show, and when remember that, and I think he told us that was started as a joke, and they were doing it and I think that's probably their most known beer right now.
Yeah.
People staying in line on a freaking weird weather to get it.
Well, Gil, that's how all good things typically start out as a joke, right?
Right.
So
like this.
You know what? Let's get okay. Yeah. No. So anyway, so that's all that we got for tonight. We're gonna go ahead and wrap the show up, but we want to be sure to invite you next week when we have Garrett Marrero on. He's gonna be joining us all the way from the great 49th or 50th. State? I can't remember which one. I think.
And we're gonna hate every minute of the show, right?
The 50th state of Hawaii, where he's gonna be experiencing some awesome weather, and we're gonna be probably, I don't know, we're supposed to get snow tonight, but nonetheless, it's still gonna be cold next week Thursday. And he's gonna be in Hawaii on the beach, behind him drinking beer. So nonetheless, be sure to join us next week when we have Garrett Marrero on from Maui Brewing Company. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, remember, find some great friends, find some great beer, and mind those P's and Q's.
This has been Pints and Quarts, brought to you by Craft Beer Nation. You can show your support for our podcast by subscribing to our content on YouTube, Stitcher, iTunes, or our website, craftbeernation.org. Thanks for listening.